We're back.
We're back. And the thought of the day is be grateful for what you have, but do not be complacent.
I want to hear more about it.
Okay.
We'll get into it a little later, right?
Correct.
So today we talk about strategy 21, which is to negotiate while advancing, the diplomatic war strategy from the 33 strategies of war. We're negotiating on a daily basis. So this one hit me personally.
Okay.
But one of the things that I think that is cool about this tactic, this strategy of war, is that before and during negotiations, you must keep advancing. Keep relentless pressure. That I think is pretty cool because Greene gives many examples of situations where, whether it was the United States against Vietnam or in Korea or even in World War I, that instead of completing the job, they paused to negotiate and didn't keep the pressure, and it allowed the enemy to become stronger.
That's right. There was one particular, I think it was the Vietnam War, where they, like you said, stopped to negotiate, and the enemy was able to gain control of ground level. And when they went back to fight, they realized that they had lost the advantage. And so, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. Not only that, they're saying that if you continue to advance while you're negotiating, when you do indeed sit at the table, you're able to give back some of the, let's say, lands that you have conquered that are really of no consequence to you, but yet you give them back, like saying, okay, I'm willing to concede to this, but you didn't really want them in the first place.
Right.
So you're giving nothing for something. Robert Greene is very good at showing it.
It's difficult in real negotiations because one of the things to really be, I think, the strongest negotiator means you're willing to lose the deal. You're
Okay.
willing to lose everything. So like in a negotiation where, let's say, you're acquiring, whether it's a property or a business or something, we deal in property. I remember one time a couple years ago, I was so vested in the purchase of these units that I really wasn't the best negotiator because I wanted the deal so bad because I had put so much time into it over a year and blah, 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 that when I brought my partner into it, he said, you know what, if they don't give us this, which was $100,000 in discounted price, we walk away. And I said, oh man, okay, all right, I'll ask for it. And I had to ask for the $100,000 discount. And they said, no, forget it. They say, we're going to cancel escrow. My partner signs the cancellation of escrow, meaning all the seller had to do was sign and the deal is canceled, done. And I was thinking, it's over. And all of a sudden, after sending them the signed cancellation from my partner, they call me and they say, we can give you 75,000 of the 100, and we ended up closing the deal. I wasn't willing to walk away, but my partner was, and that taught me a lesson that to be the best negotiator, you really have to be willing to lose the deal,
or pay the premium.
But then you're not the best negotiator. Well, I guess, what is your goal? You're right. What is your goal? Because Greene talked about that. Sometimes in the negotiation, we forget what our actual goal is.
Well, let's break it down for a second. I agree wholeheartedly. If you're willing to walk away from the deal, you're probably in a very sweet position.
It's a strong position.
It's a strong position, and in this particular case, the partner that you had chosen had a lot of deals going on, so this was just one more deal for him.
I had only one deal.
You had only one deal at the moment.
Yeah.
And you were pot vested, pot committed, like they say in poker, right? You've been working on it for a year. You wanted to make this thing work.
No matter what.
No matter what means you're giving up potentially right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're giving up a lot. But then you partner up with this guy, and this guy said, no, it's either this way or the highway. And it was a fair request
It was.
because they were overselling it, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're willing to walk away. It's a good thing to do. But for example, the one we just got, I didn't want to lose that deal. And I got to tell you, it blurs the negotiating ability a little bit.
For sure.
And you need to be extremely careful that the other side does not read you like an open book and say, oh, you know what, this guy wants this deal. We can sit back and ask for whatever we want. You see what I mean? So then you're willing to pay a premium, but you're not the best negotiator.
Correct.
There you go.
But
which is what you just said. So.
But it depends what your goal is, because that's what Greene is talking about. He's like, be clear on what your goal is going into this negotiation, going into this battle, negotiation for a property or war. What is the end goal? And he brought up Alexander the Great's father, which was Philip II, I believe,
of Macedonia,
was very clear on what his goal was, which was to unite Greece and obtain all these lands and eventually go after Persia, the Persians. But he needed the Greek states, I guess they were independent at the time, to be united to really stand a chance against the Persians. And so that was his goal. And he would say one thing and do another, but at the end of the day, Greene makes it very clear that, this is a quote from the book, "It's amazing how people will forget your broken promises when you are strong and in a position to offer them something in their self-interest."
Yeah. How much clearer can you get, right? I mean, the book also says, mixing war with deceptive diplomacy, he made Macedonia the strongest city in Greece. And it brings Alexander the Great was his son. And Alexander the Great is growing up and seeing all this. He's being groomed to be a warrior. No wonder, he became such a tremendous figure in history that he conquered so much of the known world. And he had one of the biggest, war machines of history. Because, he had, if all he had to do, watch his father do what he did, because his father united Greece, like you said.
Yeah.
Because a divided Greece could never take on the Persians. They were just way too strong, But a united Greece, now that's a different story. Anytime you're united with a common goal, you're a more fearful enemy. But if one's going this or this way, you gotta get your groups, portray the vision, and move forward.
In your opinion, I agree. In your opinion, Philip II was extremely, let's say, successful, right, in what he did, and then his son comes and then takes it to another level.
Right.
Now, what happens after, let's say, Alexander the Great? Does it just fall off? Because isn't it, I remember hearing your parents, like, the idea is that you want your kids to be better off than you were. Does that mean more successful from your perspective?
You have to define better off. Do you want them to be more cultured? Know more about the world? Do you want them to be...
To you, what's your goal?
Do you want them to be more successful economically with money?
What is your what is your goal for your kids? Is it to be more financially successful than you have been?
My goal for my kids has changed as I have gotten older.
Hmm.
Okay, I think living a content and happy life without too many pressures from the outside world, it's something that I look forward to. So I hope for my children to be happy and productive in today's society and give something back, whether it is in with encouragement, with money, examples, not only to their kids but to everybody around them. Give something back to make the world a better place.
So to be clear, it's not to have created, let's say, more wealth than you have.
I don't know that the wealth. No, not anymore. It was. I wanted to give my children everything that I didn't have. And somewhere along the way, I realized that if you give your children a lot of things, they will not appreciate them because they have so much and their interests are spread so thin that I don't think they will appreciate it. In fact, I was having this conversation with your brother yesterday. My grandkids have so many toys and so many things that it's brutal, but I told my son, they don't appreciate what they have. I don't see how they can. I think growing up, I had one or two toys. I remember I had a Russian submarine. It was made in Russia. And I remember I had a Russian submarine, and I treated that thing with the utmost respect, and it lasted for years. Okay? I even brought it to the United States, and that thing would go underwater and had little flaps that moved. It had I think even a little light, and it ran on batteries. And I remember that I would take that
It ran on
out.
batteries? Oh.
Yeah, and I remember that I would take that out, the submarine out, and I would super clean it and never allow water to go into the compartment where the batteries were. I took care of that thing like there was no tomorrow. Okay? And it lasted for a very long time. So I just, so my thoughts over the years have changed. I just don't think that flooding kids with all kinds of, they need to work. People need to work for what they have. They need the sweat, of the brow, for what they have. This is the only way that they are going to appreciate what they obtain. It's different when you give a guy a truck than when the guy works 3 years and is saving every penny that he possibly can and then gets the truck at the end of 3 years. It's completely different. Yeah. It's my opinion. You guys can disagree with it, our viewers, but that's what I think. And so I make people work for what they have because nothing was given to me. I had to work for everything. And so, I'm very giving. I make sure to let them know that I love everybody, just in case tomorrow I don't wake up, because, you're 66 years old. Yeah. And time is flying by.
So that gives you, talking about that, it gives you an advantage in negotiating because I feel that from your perspective, you don't got time to waste. That's kind of been your approach on a lot of deals that we've come across or opportunities. It's like, this is what it is. We either, of course, there's always room for negotiation. There is always room. But you're going straight for the kill. As opposed to somebody that is maybe doesn't really know, isn't clear on what they want. You have that advantage that you're clear on what you want to spend time on and the things you want to do, and everything else you don't waste time on. And I think that has to do with the fact that you have a lot of experience and you feel that, hey, I don't got as much time left.
In reality, what do we take with us? You know? You're going to take your memories, the precious moment. And, Keanu Reeves said something really, really cool. He was being interviewed at some late night show. And the guy says, "What do you think happens when you die?" And Keanu Reeves sat back for a second and then said, "I know that those that love you will miss you." That's it. I know that those that love you will miss you.
Wow.
Okay? It's that simple. You're going to be gone. 10 years from now, you're not even going to be remembered, unless you do something, like Martin Luther King. He led his, people. He was just a tremendous human being so that's a man that will live on forever, right? In the memories of many and in history. You make a mark in history like that, so profound, like Martin Luther King. If you read his story, he did so many unbelievable, Mandela, okay? People like this, right? And then you have the other extreme, like Fidel Castro. He's going to be remembered too, but in a different light. So you're right. What is your goal? So lately, I'm willing to throw more cash on a deal if I believe that this is something that I really want today. Now, keep in mind, we're partners now. I used to come in with an investor hat, right? Now I'm coming in with representation for people. And I find out that my negotiating abilities were not that powerful, were not that strong. My negotiating abilities were not that good. Now is when I've gotten real, or I would say much better.
Well, you had somebody doing the negotiating for you.
Right.
Now you're doing your own negotiating,
Well,
or for a client.
And for a client.
And that's different.
It's completely different, because if you really want to help a client and you have their fiduciary responsibility in mind, you need to negotiate to the hilt.
Yeah.
You need to do what's best for your client.
I mean, these
books,
Greene's books have helped me a lot.
You and me both in the world. These are the #1 sellers throughout the world.
Greene talked about conflict in this chapter.
Yeah.
Because negotiating involves conflict, and you have the warrior, and you have, what did he call the other one? You have two kinds of negotiators. The one was a warrior, and the other one was the what did he call it? Like a, do you remember? It was the softer one. It was like a farmer or something. I don't remember how he worded it. But conflict. Greene talked about conflict, and people mostly want to avoid it. But when you're going into a battle or a negotiation, like right now, we're in the middle of a negotiation on behalf of a client. We're trying to get him the best deal possible, the lowest price possible. The agent on the other side is trying to get her client the highest price possible, the best deal possible. And so it's that back and forth, a little bit of like a dance of where we end up. But I take to heart what Greene talks about, where like you have to continue to keep pressure on. People could be buying time. In the real estate world, what that means is, let's say I have a good offer on the table, but somebody else is telling me they're going to be submitting an offer. I might delay, right? Someone may delay accepting this good offer because they're thinking something better is coming.
And there's nothing wrong with that if you're representing the seller.
Right.
And I would do that.
We're on the other end of it.
We're on the other end of the stick.
With, let's say, the good offer.
Right.
And we need to come to an agreement before somebody else comes in the mix.
Right. Well, you say good offer. Our offer is substantially below the asking price. Would you agree?
It is, but it's still a strong offer, because you have to take into account so many factors: the economy, where our business is going, what's the location, what's the use, right? All of that stuff.
I agree, but we don't have access to the seller.
No.
We can't talk to the seller because we have to go.
And that's the negotiating. This is where this strategy is so important, because we have to negotiate with the listing agent.
And that's why the other day you told her, look, tell your client, we've got this, make sure you tell this to your client. We have a qualified buyer, somebody that's interested in the building. His interest is beginning to wane.
Yeah.
He's looking at other property. We are potentially going to lose this client.
They may move on.
Yeah, and and the word "we" is extremely important because we are in this together. We've taken time to show the property. We've taken time to do this. So it's a battle, no matter how you cut it and slice.
Conflict. It's conflict.
It's a conflict, and people don't like conflicts.
No.
You
Well,
know?
I'll tell you, when going back to that story where my partner said, go ask for $100,000 discount. Oh man, I was sweating and
Bullets.
my heart was
pumping.
because I was very nervous to ask for that. I didn't know how to ask for it. But
Well, that's good. That's a growing experience.
It's a growing experience, and it's conflict, and they didn't like it and all that, and they were rough with me, but that builds up.
Oh yeah.
I was having the discussion of your character. Over the weekend, I was having a discussion because the idea of wanting to teach the next generation Spanish and keep Spanish in the family, right? And I was speaking to somebody over the weekend that was saying, careful, because they're going to have to test in school, and if they don't speak English in school, they're going to fall behind in their this and that, right? And I said, I'm not interested. And I said, what age did your mother come to this country? Oh, 10 years old. Did she speak a word of English when she came to this country? No. Okay. And she came out all right, right? She did very well in life. Yeah.
Does she speak English now?
Yes, she does.
Okay, because some people stay here 30 years and don't learn the language.
Yes. So she came at 10 years old from Cuba, didn't speak a word of English, and then went through and learned English in school, speak Spanish and English, and did well in life.
Okay.
So I was telling the
did
son,
well in life means what?
Good job, good family, good schools, all that stuff.
Okay.
So then the reply from this person was, yeah, but she struggled. And I said, well, yeah, that's builds character. You know, if you're trying to prevent struggle, if that's your objective, is preventing struggle, you had a really hard, childhood because you didn't speak English when you came to this country. You went through the same thing. You didn't speak English when you came to this country. But that built the person that you are today, and you went through a lot of struggle.
So are you going to put struggles to your children or whatever?
Well, the idea is that struggle is not a bad thing.
Well,
but this
you better
person,
apply that to yourself.
Well, this person, I do. This person was telling me, hey, they went through a lot of struggle. Like if it was a negative thing, and I was saying, well, that's not a bad thing. And I do apply. I put myself in situations where I have to struggle.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking your future generations.
Well, yeah, that's the challenge, right?
Wow.
Because
you have a wife to contend with.
Of course, you have to be on the same page with your partner.
Yeah, well, your partner may not want to put your offsprings through struggle, and then you have an issue.
That's the whole thing. You have to figure it out together. You're a team,
what is that saying that we say all the time? The first generation creates it, the second generation maintains it, and the third generation destroys it. They destroy whatever you build. Now, we're talking economics, but it can be applied across the board, I believe.
It's when I hear that, and I've seen different situations, I think it's because the first generation failed in teaching the second generation to create leaders. If the first generation was a leader, how do you create another leader? If you can't create another leader, then it's going to fall. It's going to fall in the second or third generation. If the first generation is successful in creating leaders, then those leaders can go and create new leaders, which is the third generation. But if not, the third generation doesn't know how to create anything. They don't know how to create wealth. They don't know how to continue a business. They don't know how to create their own wealth. So then they will run whatever business to the ground. That's my opinion. So I think it's a failure on, of course, there's responsibility on the second and third generation also, but why did it fail? I think you have to go back to the root, and the root was that something went wrong from the first to second generation, that they were not able to duplicate themselves.
Well, I think if you give your kids too much of anything, you spoil them, and spoiled kids, will not do all that well. They have so much that they don't know how to value what they have. That's why be grateful for what you have, but don't be complacent. Okay? That's something that I'm trying to apply to myself. I'm extremely grateful for what the United States has given me. This country, the United States of America. It's not perfect, but it's given me a very beautiful life. But I'm not satisfied. And I don't think not being satisfied is all that wrong. It keeps a little fire in me to continue to move forward, to continue to learn as much as you can, What does Jordan Peterson says, make sure that you're slightly better off today than the poor, miserable self that you were yesterday.
Yeah.
He says something like that. As long as you've improved a little bit today over the poor, miserable self that you were yesterday. And I think that's key. And getting back to, this strategy 21, negotiating while you're advancing, the people that continue to negotiate while they continue to advance, they probably were made through struggles. Because they're trying to expand. They're trying to grow. And that's why they face confrontations.
Right.
The only way to grow that I know is by stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it's not easy for a lot of people. I don't see it in some of my grandkids.
There'll be conflict there.
Yeah.
There'll be struggles. But that's the thing. Can we teach the next generation to understand it's good to go through these things?
I think we can. I think it's a struggle. It's a huge struggle.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's contrary to, let's say, human nature. You want to get away from the danger. You want to get away from the struggle.
Well, the other day you said in one of our podcasts that it's impossible.
What?
You said that, I'm putting you on the spot, but that's how things...
What's impossible?
You said that you compared yourself to a guy that's the same age as you that just got here from Cuba a couple of years ago, and that he said you will never know what I went through because it's impossible. And you said, I totally agree. I will never know.
I completely agree.
Right. Then so now you're saying, how do you create leaders in the new generation?
It'll be a different kind of struggle that you can put them through, I think.
Okay.
But it's not going to be the same struggle. I'll never know what that person went through, having to go through Mexico by themselves or whatever, paying somebody to get to the United States eventually, and who knows what they saw along the way.
Risking their lives.
Who knows what they experienced along the way. So how can I ever fully
understand that?
However, you can put your kids through their own struggle, right? And like opening a business, there's struggle. I mean, unless somebody gives you X amount of money to to start a business with, if you're starting a business, you're gonna struggle, because the reality of life is that you can have a lot of friends, you can have a lot of family, but when you open your own business, who actually is going to support you?
Yourself, that's it.
Probably yourself, maybe your partner.
Yeah.
So that struggle, at least from my perspective.
Like I said, I'm on the internet too much for my own good. I was reading an article this week sometime, and last week, and it was on Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood has a $400 million fortune, and he's not going to leave not one penny to any of his family members. And I don't think he's doing that because they're bad people or anything. He loves his family. I think he's built a very good, tight-knit family, I think. But he's doing it to help, apparently, 2,000 families or something like that across the United States. Because he feels, I believe this is the gist of the article, that he's made productive human beings that give back to society and are making their own waves and their own, let's say, path through the jungle, and are being successful not only economically but in other areas of life. So he's created people that are resourceful, his children and so forth. And so he's taking his money and doing whatever the heck he wants, and he's 95 and he's still he's a director, actor. I mean,
yeah.
And so, there's an example of someone that continues to create at an older age. And I think he's going to continue to do things until he no longer can.
Right.
He looks a little frail now,
Yeah.
But that's his philosophy, and, that sounds good to me.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the goal. You want the next generation to be self-sustainable.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to throw in on this strategy?
No, I think we kind of veered off a little bit from the strategy.
Yeah.
We're going to get some hyped from some of the subscribers. But listen, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, share it with family members. We're trying to grow. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers. And that's very exciting for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And reading these books and trying to bring some value into our podcast has actually changed us. So hopefully for the better.
I think so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.